Welcome, Peterson Academy, fellow students and friends. We have a very exciting dialogos today. We got Mr. Kenneth here, Kenneth Johnston, I believe that is your last name. Many of you know him on the quad. He is active on the quad, one of the active people along with me and a few other students. So, well, now you guys get to meet him face to face. And he's going to be offering a proposal today on Marxism. Don't know where this is going to go, but this is going to be a fun ride. We got Gerald, who is going to be the lead listener with Sofiane, and are both they're both really familiar with Marxist doctrine. So I kind of asked them before coming to this dialogos to kind of steelman Karl Marx a little bit, because I don't think there are any alleged Marxists in Peterson Academy. But we don't want this session to turn into a beatdown of Mr. Karl, or for Karl to become the whipping boy. So we're going to try to give the devil his due a little bit. Then we have myself as the scribe, and we have Svetlana as the herald. All right, Kenneth, really looking forward to this. Thank you for coming today. The floor is yours.
Oh gosh. Yeah. So I mean, like I said, didn't really prepare anything. I mean, I've been through all the courses of Peterson Academy. I could think of what 2, 3, Devil Call Mar, 3 or 4 solid courses on Marxism. In addition to the political philosophy courses that we have. So I think that if anybody, I mean, they're absolutely fascinating courses. So there's a lot to go through. Hopefully that, you've all been able to check out some of those. I think there's some of the more powerful courses, really. And, just in general, with the Peterson Academy, my experience has been that there's these major through lines through all the courses on how things interact and ideologies and how that kind of programming and way of thinking fills in and kind of takes over and has a a life of its own, or a small g god, or with Marxism having the state as the god. Everything's to worship the state. There's a and all those things, making that collective the highest and atomizing the individuals to where they're only in relation to the state and not in relation even to their own family. I guess some of the things I thought about, I don't know if we'll go down that route or not, is the Marx's 10-point plan versus the U.S. Bill of Rights. Those and how those two things are so diametrically opposed, and how the individual liberty guarantees the rights of the nation, or the survival of the nation, versus the nation being placed in the highest, destroying the individual, like you talked about with Gulag Archipelago, and all those just kind of these lie, kill, cheat, steal, destroy kind of ideologies that emerge to collect power and get, and how all the corruptions kind of run in the same opposition to man being made in the image of God, and everyone having a value to their life beyond its service to the state, or just some really, and how those things have been. There's just so much to talk about. We could go on 100 tangents. I mean, like I said, I don't really have like a prepared seminar or sermon or anything. It's just one of the grand evils. Like, I mean, if you go from Stalin to Mao, I think that they're saying like 300 million people died, more than that maybe. Even and it is one of the existential crises we face today, with the Red Green Alliance, with the CCP funding the Islamists that are, that are causing chaos through all the systems. It's just really, you just never really see a um, kind of this meta narrative of, what I would consider good versus evil, or in all its flavors. So I don't know. That's kind of opening statement, I guess. I guess I rambled on long enough. I don't know if there's a thread there to pull, or if we need to continue to chat.
Sofiane, did you want to respond to anything there?
Well, I'm thinking about it.
Anything stick out, like anything
Well,
make sense, or just like the random ramblings of all the other cohorts?
Well, it's 3:30 here, so maybe I didn't catch on it, but it seemed pretty coherent to me. Maybe I'm insane, I don't know. But yeah, about the whole Mao and Stalin causing a lot of death thing, that just wasn't Marxism as it is intended. You've got Maoism, you've got Stalinism. They didn't follow the blueprint. They just try to do their own things, and it's just not a valid way to do things. And a lot of success. They grew into like countries that were pretty successful in their industries and such, kind of forces to be reckoned with. And yeah, that's the way I see it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's the standard line, right? Communism's never been done correctly, or Marxism's never been executed properly. Like, nobody can do it. They don't have the, even though it's based on science and the centralization of the market and everything. Yeah, it's never been. And then, so that kind of leads to what would be the reason that it could never be done correctly. And then that comes down to what we were talking about, like the 10-point plan versus the Bill of Rights, like the organizing principles that line up behind the Marxist doctrine, and versus the life, liberty, pursuit of happiness or property, and that contrast. You agree?
I mean, saying that it's never been done properly is maybe another statement. The USSR got pretty damn far into being a powerful state and having successes in many areas. And, the US was pretty concerned that it might lose the war against it. So maybe there's some more merit to be attributed.
Well, really, they didn't. I mean, only as they were expanding and like as a parasitic ideology. Once they had destroyed the Ukraine, some of the most fertile land, some of the most prosperous farming on the European continent. Once they had destroyed that, their people starved. So if they weren't expanding and taking over additional, a lot like any empire, like whenever it stops expanding, then it starts to die. So those guys were, definitely, and the man, there's some really great stuff in the Michael Malice course on that. I don't recall it all at the moment, but there's some really eye-opening. Yeah.
What are you looking for? Maybe I remember.
Oh, just like I guess that was the main thing I was thinking of, was just that just whenever the government took over the control of the Ukraine breadbasket, and the and then the production went to nothing, or
yeah, I think that's the famine of 1921, 1922 with Lenin. That's the dark soil, Chernozem, from the kulaks that was taken over. and over 2 to 4 million Ukrainians died.
So you have, you
But
have that kind of thing. Yeah, go ahead.
the thing is, Lenin took over the land, sure, but that was necessary. That was a necessary step for the development of the country itself. That's the people who own the means of production, they're bourgeois. They didn't earn what they got. That's stuff they stole. It's generational wealth. It's not something that they truly deserve in the end. You might equate it to steal as a consequence of taking advantage of the working force.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's the spirit of Cain that exists within the doctrine, within the philosophy. That's this jealousy, or that tears down and destroys everything that is the creator, the creative. Like the free market, how things can be priced themselves, how supply and demand are matched through the invisible hand. These things are, you know that's exactly, this jealousy, or this totalitarianism, this need to create things the same. Those are that's the destructive force behind all that. Whenever they killed all the culottes, or and destroyed all of not just the actual prosperity, but the means of achieving prosperity. The people who, the DNA of the prosperity, um, to completely destroy the idea and the ideal. Those are, it's kind of incredible how terrible, we as humans can make things. Whenever we put the wrong things as the highest things, whenever we put the state above, the individual liberty, or the coercion of conscience, or free will, essentially, and break down all the institutions.
What's the ideal you referred to?
Like eudaimonia, flourishing, florensis, the bearing of fruit, multiplying,
Yep.
that would be, that I would consider
Well,
that to be the ideal. So,
you can have that. You can have that statewide. You can't really trust the individual to make proper decision on its own. He's not. There's not a primordial force that drives individuals to make enlightened decisions on their own. Whatever constitutes their value is a consequence, direct consequence of the group they're in. You take somebody, anyone, you put them on their own. They're not consequential. They're not important. Now you put them in a group. Now they mean something, and that's the same thing. You can't trust somebody with their own means of making. You can't trust somebody with their own decisions, because what matters is the intention of the group.
and I think that's, I think that that's been borne out in the experiments. That's shown that that's incorrect. That is destructive to a society. That whenever people are shaped into bricks, they're less valuable than when they're stones. They're less strong. They're less. They have. They lose that humanity, the thing that makes them special, the thing that they're there for. Instead of chasing their own, like you said, the primordial drive to pursue, what's being shown to them, but having that taken away, and so now you've got people who are ill suited to do one task forced to do that task, while there are people that are well suited to do that task that are forced to do some other task because somebody has too much intellectual pride and thinks that they know, some economic science or some way of allocating resources, even in labor and everything, to some other ends. That's so everyone, I think, and most people have had the experience where you were properly motivated by something that drove you versus something that may drive the average person, had no effect on you, because it wasn't something that interested you. It just wasn't the right thing for you. There's a, so that kind of it's like an organic life versus an inorganic. It's like, the science and the influence of that scientific era heavily influenced the execution of the USSR and other communist Marxist ideals, because it was putting kind of putting those things above others. That we could make things out of the incompatible parts or what have you. Yeah, so and I think a lot of, go ahead.
Please, I'm listening.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think a lot of that has to do with that foundational, having the rights of man, the right to property, the right to your life, the right to self-determination, and all those things in contrast are really what having the two systems play out, or is what really shows the deformity or inferiority of the other ideal, or idea.
Can I jump in for a bit here, there, Sofiane? I want to correct a couple errors. First of all, the comment that individuals are only valued in relation to the state, and the state being placed in the highest position. That's not true.
It is true. They destroyed the family unit.
So socialism is about the individual, and now we have there's different opinions on the family unit for certain. That's no question. And that's also being reevaluated in current socialism. But anyways, so the whole point of socialism is in the end to empower the individual. But like Hegel himself stated a couple hundred years ago, that the world is evolving toward the end state, and the state needs to be in power at this time until, and I hate to use this word, but reactionaries are brought into line. There's still reactionaries that are still promoting bad philosophy and are getting in the way of socialism being able to bring all the values that it does bring. So it does place the individual in the highest position, and the state, according to socialism, and you made a good point, and I'll talk about this, that indeed socialism has not been done correctly, but neither has capitalism, and capitalism needs to admit that its failures as well. But anyways, in the end, it is still the belief of socialism that the state will eventually wither away. So that's one error. Whether or not it's happening now, totally debatable, understandable. But the position of socialism is that it will get there. I want to correct the claim about 300 million dead. And this is going to sound funny, but the highest numbers, the highest claims, because these are very debatable, numbers. The highest claims are about 150 million is the highest numbers. The lowest numbers are much less than that. Nobody knows for sure. But socialism has already admitted the grievous errors of Stalin and Mao. Those have already been admitted. Khrushchev himself in the 1950s, I believe it was, came out and admitted that Stalin was wrong. Everybody knew that. Everyone was just terrified of Stalin. He was an interesting individual. So socialism admits those errors, whereas capitalism needs to also admit its many errors. For example, third world countries still to this day serve Western nations, and it's a known fact. It's not even disputable. In fact, it's even in the Peterson Academy course on bank failures, and I think it was the World Bank. I can't remember which organization or the name right now, but it's in the course. He talks about it, where they purposely used loans to third world countries to keep them poor. So capitalism has got its failures as well. And stop me at any time you want to refute any point, because I got a few more yet. So also, socialism did not destroy Ukrainian farmland. It always was, and it still is, very productive. What happened was the farmers did not want to give up their land when it was socialized for the people, and they fought against that. And so when the state came in to take it, they fought against it. Also, there was, and maybe you guys can help me, I can't remember the guy's name, Lysenko, that crazy, I admit he was crazy. He had this crazy idea that wheat and crops were socialistic as well. And so they did this crazy experiment that resulted in a lot of famine. I think it was Lysenko. Is that, if anybody can correct me if I've got the wrong guy. But the Ukrainian farmland still is to this day very, very productive. So, and we've had our famines in the West as well. Supply and demand has led to great excesses. The dirty 30s occurred, like they argue, there's a lot of arguments about it, but it occurred as soon as the stock market crashed. Unemployment went to 25%, and people were out of work, and there was a lot of hunger and what's the word I'm looking for? A lot of people living poor lives in the dirty 30s in the West, right? So I guess the last point I wanted to make so far was that socialism also bears fruits. Capitalism certainly has been better at production up until now, but the distribution of the rewards is very unequal. And, capitalists will argue that, hey, I earned my profits, those are mine. And that's a fair argument. That's a very arguable point. But it's also arguable that me as a worker, I'm worth more. I just can't get more. So, the bearing of fruits, I would argue, is kind of goes both ways. So that's the only points I had up till now. Feel free to fire away on any of them, comrade. I was going to
Svetlana has her hand up as well.
I was going to defend Xi Jinping on one thing, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it.
Well, I mean, communist Canada, right? So.
I just wanted to share a couple of examples because I think it might give a bit of, perspective. When I was born in Kazakhstan, but it was USSR when I was born. And at the time I was born, it was already towards the end, so it was kind of a disaster already. But when my mom was born, she was born when Stalin just died, so in 1953. And growing up, she was just today, I had this conversation with her. She was telling me that she was growing up thinking that she is living in the best country in the world. There is absolutely nothing like it. All the kids thought that, and this is something that, they would repeatedly were told, but not just that, because kids, like, technically they would sense when something is off, right? So yes, there were some really good things, free education, free healthcare. Education was quite good as well. Really high quality professionals and things like that. But then on the other hand, there are some other stories about, people who, let's say, were a little bit more disagreeable, and then they would make a comment against the state in a private conversation, and they are done. They are completely canceled. They would be kicked out of the universities. They would lose their jobs. It was just an absolute disaster. So it would create this situation where you don't really know whom to trust, and then there is this saying about, like I say Russian people, but I don't mean Russian, I mean all the countries of USSR, in the past, that initially they're not super nice, they're not like Canadians smiling and holding doors for each other. And it takes time to actually develop really close relationships. But the moment the moment you're a part of the group and I trust you, like that's it. The doors are open. You're going to be hosted as a very important guest. So it also comes, I believe, from those like cultural kind of communistic tendencies, because you didn't know whom to trust. Again, something out of private conversation could be reported to KGB and that's it, you're done. So this aspect kind of made people sense who is a friend and who is not. And then another point, I was thinking about it, it also probably relevant to the like type of personality, people who are naturally more agreeable people, they would be on board with all of this. Yes, equal, same things for everybody. Let's all be on the same page. People who are more disagreeable and they have like their own opinions, and they want to fight for their own opinions, definitely would struggle. But then another example that happened in USSR during these like times of communism, a lot of people who are scientists, like super educated, very, very competitive people, at some point they left when they had an option, right? They moved to the West somewhere, to US, many of them. Why? Because they being at this very high level, this type of equality at all costs, they didn't really work for them. So there are tons of those examples where highly educated people, they would actually find a way to leave the country because, and this is how USSR actually lost a lot of, their big brains and, yeah.
Yeah, like you said, like it inherently builds a society based on lies and mistrust, right? Like versus a high trust society that like capitalism requires, where you think I'm giving you a good deal and I think I'm getting a good deal, and so we make a deal, versus a coercive type where everyone gets the same, like it's all uniform things. Yeah, those are great points. That really fleshes out a lot of things that and I don't remember, there was a great quote in there about the Sofiane may remember what they said about the society being built on lies, but I know there's a great quote in there somewhere.
But they were
Myth not.
very big lies because, they were told this story that very, very soon we would get into this prosperous future where you get into the supermarket and everything is free. You will have absolutely everything you ever wanted. And I mean, it's fun to have such big dreams and growing up, looking forward to something like that, I guess. And until you realize that it's never going to happen.
Yeah, like the free buses in New York City, right? They said they're already free. But yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, what did they say? They said they pretend to, or what was it? We pretend to work and they pretend to pay us, something like that. I think that was one of them.
That's the one.
I'm going to interject here because I did notice a few arguments kind of bubbling up here, and they'll all tie together. But Sofiane made an argument of social construct. He didn't use those exact words, but he made an epistemological point about people. How do you know what your ideal is? And you responded with eudaimonia and flourishing. And he's kind of shifting that argument here, kind of raising the epistemological question. How do you know that the social construct you're in, how do you know that you're not just a product of, and you're not the parrot head for your ideology of capitalism or Americanism? And that kind of carried through that social construct argument. And you'll see followers of Marx and Marcuse make that argument tremendously. That the reason why that we have not seen the end of capitalism and the rise of the proletariat yet is because the people are inundated with candy floss and entertainment. They're just not rising up. Or as Gerald would say when he makes the point, the reason why we haven't had the socialist ideal is because people with bad ideas are not complying. There's a non-compliant element here. And then Svetlana made the point as well going into this, where she believed in their, in her home country that things were good, right? Things were really good. People that were trapped, particularly the lower class, or those who did not have the aristocracy of pull, or you mean the inner connections. They weren't in the esoteric group of the KGB. They all thought it was good until you started getting an education. Maybe you got in bed with the government a little bit, and you were able to see how things were on the other side of the wall. You were intelligent enough to see beyond your social construct. Then people started leaving, and the Soviet Union experienced a sort of brain drain. They started losing their highly educated people. But that still doesn't negate the fact that a big mass of people can often believe, because they are products of their social construct, they are products of their environment, that things are just nilly-willy. So my question back to you, kind of tying all of those arguments that kind of bubbled up between all the participants, Kenneth, how do you... There seems to be a major thrust in certain circles of our culture that, America is not great. 1619 Project, that patriarchy is inherently oppressive. And then there's some people who blindly believe that in the American ideal, and they think Trump is the second Jesus or something. Or, people kind of go all extremes. But a huge sway of politics and a huge what kind of keeps things stagnant in a given system or are going up in flames in a revolution is based on the major populace. Like, what are the populace? What do they believe? And so my question back to you is one of both epistemology, Kenneth. How do you know that you're not the product of a social construct, or that your knowledge of what is good is actually grounded in something beyond the social construct of the collective? And then the question two is, how do you go about educating the masses so that they can kind of inculcate proper values that aren't just parrot heads or ideologues for a given ideology?
That's an interesting question. Yeah. And I do think that a lot of what we've talked about comes down to those two things. Which narrative do you buy into? What story do you believe? And where do you place yourself in the story? And where does that allow for you to have a life? To be the hero of your own story, or to do your part. Yeah, I definitely, I think, that those things, the individualist society versus the collectivist society, the guilt, stick versus the shame stick, the going back to high trust versus low trust versus a questioning versus a non-question, openness versus a closeness. Can I even question this? Has anybody ever questioned this before? This just two generations away from completely being in a completely different environment, in a completely different society than the one that maybe your parents experienced or your grandparents experienced. And it's very easy to trade off those things for promises, but understanding the principles that allow for those things, kind of like Gerald was talking about, like, yeah, the distribution may be even unfair or like very disproportionate distribution, but that system applies to all. Like the rule of law is one of the major things whenever you're in Afghanistan, Iraq, the amount of corruption that exists within other countries, that to get anything done, you got to add an extra, extra day's pay or extra week's pay just to get to the next stamp that you need within the bureaucracy. It just creates these layers upon layers of self-interest, and things that corrupted power that's imposed upon people, and that's really a lot of the difference, between the Western ideals and these corruptions or
What do you mean by the,
yeah.
the rule? Are you saying that the rule of law is not present in third world countries? That's why you have to make bribes to kind of get anything done. Okay, so you can't act based on a given law. You have to act
Yeah.
based on who you know. As Svetlana was saying, it all depends on your I call it aristocracy of pull. That's
Yeah,
Ayn Rand's
your
statement,
tribe.
but your
Yeah,
tribe,
your
very tribal.
Yeah, like
Um,
in Iraq, you couldn't get a job on your own without your sheikh. You couldn't get if something happened to your house, you didn't have home insurance. You don't have car insurance. You don't have any of those things. All those things go through your fealty, through your lineage, and you have to pay into that. If they wanted to get a police officer, they would get one out of the tribe, of the chief's tribe, and I mean, in America has its clannishness as well, like there's, and that's just I think that's a natural human thing, or maybe that's a one of those kind of precursors or those basic ideas, and one of those things that communism and socialism was trying to root out. It's that kind of nepotism or that kind of self-servingness, but and it but it still allows for or people are going to do that, like kind of like you were talking about. There's this Rousseau, noble savage kind of like, there's no, like people don't do the right thing on their own without some organizing principle, or really without a proper religion of some sort, something to put them in hierarchy. um Going back to kind of what you're saying, I mean, I pretty much ascribe to, even though I may not be able to articulate it perfectly, or as well as Pageau and Peterson and all these guys articulate it, but these patterns of reality that this fractal thing that that goes from the family to the clan, to the state, to the nation, to the like this way of organizing subsidiarily, this way of recognizing interactions, and if you don't trust your parents, then why would you trust your teachers? This
yeah.
this this thing that's built into us, through our interactions or whatever have you. And then if you take that and invert it and put the highest part of the higher, like this direct line, like then it just breaks everything into pieces. It's 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 a way to create no other support too.
Yeah.
Just like with what they say about the Great Society, or what the socialism in the United States, where you started having this incentivizing fatherness in communities and stuff, to receive more welfare. Like if you were married, then you couldn't receive the same welfare than if you weren't. Those, you create this dependence on the state, as the father, as the patriarchy, or the whatever. And then, so instead of a voluntariness, then you have this compulsion, and that's I think that's probably the biggest thing, is this it's like I said, well, what would happen? It's not just that you would be in trouble, but like you may lose your life. Like it's
Yeah.
not just that someone may think, oh, well, like this guy's crazy. Don't want to hang out with him. This voluntary association. No, now you're going to have now the KGB's called. We got people coming in the door.
Yeah. I got one more question, and I'm gonna let Svetlana ask her question, kind of from the Scribe perspective here. I like what you just said. You talked a lot about principles, order, governing principles, and you also mentioned rule of law. I want to kind of counter, because this idea popped up when you brought up the spirit of Cain earlier, and that's an example of a lower value, not in its proper place, not in the proper hierarchy of values. Envy, because sometimes Dr. Balan talks this. A little bit of envy is good because it drives you to become better, but this envy does not have its place, and now it's taken the top seat of government, and now it's trying to redistribute everything. But that spirit of Cain, as you mentioned, envy, does need to be mitigated. An argument that John Rawls would make is if you don't mitigate the envy in your society incrementally, properly, then you're going to have a revolution on his hands. And that's when he makes the part of the argument of the veil of ignorance, right? Because everyone comes here with different gifts. You're born into a situation, you're white, so you're born white, so you're more privileged than me because I'm half Asian, right? Okay, actually, that's a bad comparison, but
that makes you move.
But that's the argument. You're born into privilege, and so when John Rawls is wanting to make his government, you need to extend. You could say that rule of law beyond the scope of this life, and consider he has some weird veil of he gets into metaphysics dualism for a second, where you need to somehow make up for, you need to create a society where it benefits the person who is born in the worst circumstance, right?
Yeah.
It makes a lot of those arguments, and that's kind of that's a counter someone would have to a pure capitalist. Is you got to have, how are you going to mitigate resentment when you are born into poverty? What do you do?
Yeah, but that's even with most people's experience of capitalism is that you could be the prince today and the pauper tomorrow. You could be on the top today and on the bottom tomorrow. Like that's entrepreneurial spirit of big risk, big reward. Those and building those catches in the system, building the but for the grace of God go I. All those things, like those protecting the minority, right? Because tomorrow you may be the minority. Protecting the filibuster, so that you can filibuster whenever you're out of power. All those things are key to the high trust system working, and believing, everybody understanding the rules and everybody applying the rule, dancing to the same music, understanding the same what do you call it, the music of the spheres, like kind of those things, the things that move us are free to move us, that we lean into it instead of leaning out of it. But yeah, that's exactly that veil of ignorance is one of the keys to the system, and to the rule of law, like we were talking about, because without that, you may come back to your shores, return to your home, and not be, not have the same protection that the others, that the least would have.
I guess to repackage my question with the rule of law,
Mm-hmm.
how far does the rule of law extend to? Because John Rawls would make the argument the rule of law extends to something that is beyond this life, right? And same with Islamism, they would believe that their rule of law, because they're governed by a rule, extends
Mm-hmm.
into the afterlife, and that justifies Jala and all their doctrines. And even some bad Christians, like in times past, would justify some awful things because their rule of law extends into heaven. And so this life is okay to be tortured for 5 minutes in this life. It means that you'll accept Christ and join the church. bad things. So how, you mentioned rule of law. How far does the rule of law extend to, and where does it stop? Like, where are the parameters of this rule of law?
Just that, that it's an equality of accountability. I don't know about the the ends justifying the means type of argument. I think it's more of a like I said, a framework of society to ensure that everyone and a lot of times that breaks down, and that's one of the things. Well, it's one of the last vestiges that we have. I mean, if you look at the 10-point plan and everything from the seizure of property and the taxes and the education and the pillars of the institutions, whenever the other ideologies try to subvert the institutions and tear them down and say, well, like you said, the 1619 versus what, I cannot tell a lie. Whenever I grew up, kind of this mythological ethnic state, like ethno states, symbolic nation that kind of like was like baseball mom and apple pie, all those things. To try to see, whenever you see those things subverted and changed, then you're kind of it's a strange kind of thing to see, and then kind of, I don't know, kind of went off on a tangent there, I think.
No, sorry, I'm asking a question. Like, you brought, when did the means justify the ends justify the means? At what point? Because Solzhenitsyn makes his point in the Gulag. At one point, Stalin said he's got to sacrifice these forests, sacrifice this, sacrifice that for the collective good. At one point, you say, well, to hell with this collective good. That there's no such thing as the collective good. So, and that's a really hard question, because was it John F. Kennedy or Ronald Reagan? One of them two says, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country."
Yeah,
you can argue that's a collectivistic statement there, and okay, till what end? So yeah, I don't want to. That's my Scribe report questioning. I don't want to take the roles of listener, so I'll turn it back to you and Svetlana. So
I do want to kind of say one thing, and I don't know if it's just a tangent or not, but like when you're a junior officer in the in the army or whatever, you're dealing with guys that have been in 15, 17 years. They're the senior enlisted guy, he's advising you, the sergeant first class, the NCO, he's kind of showing you the way that things are supposed to be. And you kind of wonder, like, well, what's really the purpose of this guy? And the thing that you learn is that as this idealistic young leader, you're supposed to be the moral compass for this, so whenever things start to go off track, kind of just like what you're talking about, when like you're supposed to be the one with the moral fortitude to stand up and say, hey guys, we're not going to do it that way. That's not properly proportional. That's not, that's illegal. That's something, and that's kind of your job, is to be that, that conscious of the, because when you're in the fight, whenever things are going bad, you just want to, do it all. And there's kind of got to be those safety valves and things to bring things back online. And
so the safety valve is individual consciousness.
Yeah. Or
okay.
Yeah. Within a system that is going to support that, because there's systems that are going to throw that out, or going to say, you don't have a right to, to speak up whenever you don't, whenever you see something that's not the right thing.
Yeah.
Particularly whenever you're in like a collectivist society, whenever you're, I think they've done a lot of studies on like the impact of a collectivist society versus individual society, like on, I think it was like South Korean airline pilots, or some other groups as well, where they wouldn't question authority, and that would lead to them having more bad outcomes, or and other things.
Sorry, Svetlana, I'm gonna ask another question here. I know you got questions, but it ties in because you mentioned your military career. It ties in what we were kind of talking about in the chat, and I kind of mentioned that infiltration of Marxisms into certain institutions and how that works. And you kind of push back on that. It's not so much an infiltration. I don't know exactly what you said, but it's the way Marxism kind of. Here's an idea: the way Marxism kind of, or collectivist notions kind of take hold in various institutions is when individual consciousness doesn't speak up and say, hey, something is wrong. You mentioned the military and the need for a moral compass, right? And maybe you get an order from top down that doesn't seem right. What do? Do you follow the orders blindly, or do you speak up and say, hey, this isn't right? The example I brought, I'll make a plug for this guy because I think it's worth reading.
May I remind you, Khaden, in the U.S. Army, you are not allowed to disobey an order either unless it's illegal.
Well, I'm going to talk about a man in the Space Force who disobeyed an order, Matthew Lohmeyer, on the
officers
back. He was a Space Force lieutenant, and he noticed Marxist doctrine getting taught in the military, so he wrote a book. And his commanders discharged him. He was kicked out of the military, lost his pension and everything. He spoke the truth because he noticed something was not right, and he went against the tide and sacrificed his career.
We don't have that could be true. We don't know. We're taking your word on that.
You take more. Oh, you can read his book. It's a good story. Anyways, I bring this up because he spoke the truth against the culture that was not supportive of it. Like Kenneth was saying, sometimes you're in a culture that doesn't support it. He stuck through and chose to lose his career. Funny enough, this was during Biden's administration. He lost his career. He was at he was at like some rally with Donald Trump, and he asked Donald Trump about these questions of Marxism in the military and everything. How can we can re-strengthen our military? And he says, I'm going to get rid of those people who are spreading Marxist doctrines in the military, and I'm going to put you in charge of it. And now Matthew Lohmeyer is the undersecretary of the Air Force. He's now the boss over over the people who fired him, and it's now his task to kind of clean house. Interesting story.
I was reading this great book on this book about, I think it was about a company of U.S. soldiers in Vietnam during this particular string of battles, and it was hilarious. In this one battle, this one company was on the ground fighting, and the colonel is above them in a helicopter, and they're taking heavy fire, and they're hiding behind the rocks, and the colonel's up there, and he says, advance. Our intelligence tells us all that is a rifle company ahead of you. The sergeant on the ground replies, toughest effing rifle company I ever seen. We're not moving. And the colonel says to him, he says, I'm ordering you to advance. And Lee says, I don't give a rat's ass what you say. Those are exact words. He says, we're not moving. Just
and those are likely conscripts. So I mean, they're likely draftees. So think how much more you're going to have with volunteers, with the all volunteer force. And yeah, my guys had that exact same experience whenever they got stuck in a minefield driving back to Kuwait, and they had the mines go off, and it took out the tires on a couple of trailers, and the colonel told the man, hey, you're gonna have to drive on straight through there. He said, well, you're gonna have to come out here and ground guide me, sir. He wasn't having it. Not just risking it, So that's the big difference with the and maybe that's why the American military is so much stronger in the end than other militaries, besides the technological advancement and the trust that the men have between one another, and the willingness to try to do the right things. There's this there's just a lot more followed, like that you knew
They're
what you signed up for.
individuals.
Yeah, and you they've always said that the difference between the American soldier and the Continental soldier was that the American soldier had to understand why he was doing a task. Had to they want to know why.
That's
And
one
once they
reason. That's one reason I believe China will not engage the U.S. in war, because no Chinese officer will make a decision. His
right,
life, you make a decision, you're wrong, you're done, and
right,
everything will go to the top. And when it goes to the top, nothing gets done. And I think China knows that, and that they won't engage the U.S. They're probably looking at Venezuela and going, "What the hell?" You know,
Well,
like
Kenneth,
what?
even back
you
to the
talked
Anyways,
Panama
about like
Canal, right?
we should
being
get
a
back
moral
on topic
compass.
here.
Yeah.
This
Khaden,
is
are
the
you
topic.
No,
finished
yeah.
doing our job? Did we do our job now?
Well, sorry. You mentioned moral compasses, right? And a culture that doesn't support it. And if you don't have a culture that supports you having individualism, then it's not going to happen. And I think about the examples in the military. If you choose not to act on your individual consciousness, you tilt the culture to more of a collectivist groupthink. Does that make sense? So if Matthew Lohmeyer didn't write his book, who knows what would have happened? Maybe the military would have taken one more inch towards Marxism and more conformists, and that would have snuffed out more freedom of thought, and America's military would have become weaker as a result. And then
Um,
the decline is not like this, but it's like this, because now you can't think for yourself. And so I think you and I, all of us, where we're at in our various lives, we're the pivot point where we can tilt our culture by courage and consciousness acting on that towards one direction, or we can remain silent and be the appeasers to groupthink tyrannical forces. So
well, getting
I just want
back
to
on
tie that in.
topic.
Yeah,
Getting
getting
back on
that.
topic.
I'm tying that back to social constructivism that Sofiane brought up. That's how you override social constructs. So
The way
So
way one of my professors in at St. Martin, he was from, I think he's from actual USSR at the time. He was in Washington State, but he may have gotten it from Solzhenitsyn. I'm not sure. But he said that it's better to be responsible for your freedom than free from your responsibility, and that's really one of the big traps, that we see in communism or in these statisms, that let the daddy state take care of everything for you and everything will be wonderful, and you know
I wanna correct a few more of the errors that have come out today.
no
Um,
errors.
before I do that, Svetlana, did you say you were from Kazakhstan?
Yeah, I was born in Kazakhstan.
I have a client from Kazakhstan, and I don't know if I see no. She had no reason to fib to me, so I believe it must be true. But she said she left Kazakhstan and came to Canada because twice her son was kidnapped for ransom money. I don't know if that sounds um,
I mean,
far-fetched.
it's a big country, depends when and where, but all sorts
Yeah,
of things are happening. Yeah.
interesting. Okay. Yeah. So I just wanted to correct a couple things. I haven't seen anything yet that is that smoking gun that there you go, socialism is wrong, capitalism is right. We're picking little, I guess the old saying, fly poop out of pepper, and a lot of the arguments that are being used could be used just as directly against capitalism as well. We talk about the famous saying by Solzhenitsyn, "Live not by lies." Well, if we look at the West here, we look at the United States, and we look at that, and we look at the rule of law. Well, in just a few minutes, I picked out a few examples of major governmental lies during the Sandinista era, where we lied to that whole time about what was going on. The CIA lied for decades. They operated like completely outside the law before they were reined in. um, Obama administration, outside the rule of law. This is a fact. This is a known fact. They killed U.S. citizens illegally. They even went to court, and they actually won in court. The judge said I have no ability to override this governmental order. And I can even get the names, if anybody's not familiar with the case, I can get the name of the U.S. citizens that the Obama administration killed. We looked at the recent. Oh yeah, I can. The book is called Seven Absolute Rights by Canadian professor Ryan Alford. But anyways, so the Biden administration during the recent elections, they lied about the laptop. They forced social media to lie, to withhold conservative voices, and the Russia hoax. I mean, the Russia hoax was pure election interference. That should be jail time for those people. So what I'm getting at is, we say, look, live not by lies, but we've got our share too. That's a door that swings.
There's consequences for those lies, minor or major. Maybe they're not sufficient consequences, but at least now we know about it, and they make judgment about it, and there's not allowed to be vigilantism that from a justice denied.
When does Obama get out of jail?
I don't know. Yeah.
A couple of things. There's a couple of things I wanted to kind of go over. Khaden, you asked the question, how do you inculcate proper values? Well, wait a minute. Don't we here in the West, don't we accuse socialism of doing the exact same thing? And is that not a function of who decides what is inculcation and who decides what proper values are? So I don't know if that's a fair statement to say. And the last thing I want.
That's why I said that judge to get the choose the narrative, right? Like you're going to choose the story that you live by. You're going to choose that.
Again, we can argue that same argument against ourselves here, right? We've been living with a narrative the whole Biden administration, and we're still living with a narrative against Trump. So that's kind of a door that swings both ways. So I don't know if that's the the nail in the coffin of socialism we sometimes think it is. And this is an interesting thing, and I can't believe I'm going to do this, but I'm going to contradict Dr. Peterson a little bit here. He talks about the spirit of Cain and envy in the Soviet Union, but right now, that's my argument. I'm going to say that's nothing more than an ad hominem argument with no empirical basis. We simply say, look at, they have a spirit of envy. Well, wait a minute. Millions of Americans can't afford basic health insurance, while multimillionaires and billionaires control something like 90% of the wealth. So, I could argue this is not a problem of envy, it's a problem of greed. And we've got empirical data to back that up. So I don't know if that's a solid argument. I don't see that, And finally, in one comment I wanted to make with John Rawls and his veil of ignorance, I believe that resulted in a hypothetical system that's actually closer to socialism than capitalism. Wasn't he attacked for being a socialist after he brought out his book? So
they practically
I guess
redefine liberalism as democratic socialism, liberalism. So
yeah, So I don't see that nail in the coffin here. A lot of the arguments we're making could swing both ways.
But they're allowed to swing both ways. They do swing both ways. There's a pendulum of that swings versus some like rigid structure. It's a system that breathes. It reacts and counter reacts.
Are you saying that here we're allowed to swing the door, there they're not allowed? Is that kind of what you're?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
That's a
so
fair
it's like
statement.
we're going to go this way, and we went too far. Let's go back, and we're going to swing all the way back. And the thing that we've kind of done, or the trend that we've seen, is the concentration to the executive over the years. Just like you're talking about, well, why is Obama not in jail? Because we continue to concentrate power to the executive, where at some point in our politics we have to swing back to the legislative.
There's a good book on that, and it's almost 100 years old. I'm trying to remember. Tom's got a question there. There's a what was the Our Enemy, the State. It was written in 1938, I think. It's still a very relevant book. Yeah.
It's amazing how much of the all of that we're rehashing, going back through, rewriting the same story again.
I didn't even know Tom and Brandon were in here. They weren't on my screen.
Yeah,
Hi guys.
Tom wants to ask a question. He wants to attempt to answer Gerald's. I try to answer Gerald's answer. Before we hear from Tom, Svetlana, your hand was up earlier, and we kind of walked over your upraised hand. Let's hear from you first, and then we'll hear from Tom.
Yeah, it's I'm just trying to make this connection back again to where I wanted to kind of bring it in. But to that point, to the pendulum point, I think, in the logics course, we talked about, Professor Higgs talked about how we as humans are wired for consistency. So we want this consistency, right? We want to be consistent and to get this consistency from others. And then suddenly, if somebody in politics, let's say, changed their mind, so we say, well, you're a hypocrite because you didn't say it back then, and now you're saying that. And I think this is a big barrier towards actually using this pendulum, the right way. When we go too far and then, okay, wait a minute, probably we need to pull back. So this is one point I wanted to make. And then another one, I think that the time in history actually plays a really important role in regards to, let's say, like communism or socialism, how successful it is or why it is even happening and why people are getting on board. And in the example of USSR, probably because of the, when the Second World War ended, the biggest thing that people wanted, they wanted this stability, right? And communism provided them this like big kind of sold them this big hope that we are together, like a big family. There is one party, one country. We're going to create this stability no matter what. And here is the hope for this like better future. And there is nothing like hope that, brings people together. So the time in history, I think, plays a really important role. And then, but when I think what is happening in the West these days, I guess it's probably the other way around. I don't know how to call it. Maybe the boredom, and then we want a bigger hope or a bigger cause or something like that.
Yes, the unity and the diversity, like the central versus the marginalized, for sure. Yeah, and that you see a lot of that with with the strong men in other governments as well. I think that's what that system continue to concentrate power in the Lenin and Stalin and so forth, and into the mechanism that supported it, and those the people kept disappearing from the pictures and all of those things.
So let's hear from Tom now.
I just want to answer Gerald's question, or rather critique, about the corruption that happens in the capitalist. Sorry, it's 2:00. Well, there are some transparency that happens in the U.S. compared to when you go to this socialist country that you mentioned, like Lenin. I mean, Lenin is a bit extreme, but even like areas such as very collectivist areas, they don't disclose this information to everyone. So it doesn't seem that there's no lies there, but actually they don't disclose it. Like, for example, the East Germany and West Germany. East Germany has lower crimes, less starvation, less poverty, according to statistics. Whereas West Germany had higher crime rate, more poverty, more. It could be true. That could be true. But then, it begs the question, like, how can we know? Because the empirical evidence of the people who live in the East Germany are saying the opposite to what is record in the East Germany. So yeah, that's what I'm going to say there. The fact that we can actually see the corruption in the West gives us a thumbs up that we have transparency that's going on, and we, there are some checking of power, like check and balances that's going on. So yeah, maybe that would answer your question.
Yeah, I like that, Tom. And nobody ran to East Germany when the wall fell, right? So.
Yeah, I do have a question though, unless if you guys are wanna. I'm not a
Ross, you have a
listener.
question?
Yeah. Okay. So one of the kind of like fundamental ideas of Marxism is the concentration of powers, the hierarchy that he saw, and I would say that is true. I don't think that's false. The criticizing Stalin and Lenin would also be part of Marxist ideology because he's criticizing the position of power. I think his prescription is wrong, which is let's not have private property, let's not have equal rights. Sorry, let's be all equal. But I think his assessment and diagnosis is correct. So that is kind of like where I'm gonna go from. Because we see in the capitalistic society, we have these very materialistic ideas, which Marx wants to get rid of. We want to be for the people. We want for the working class. Obviously, that can be very much be abused, like easily be abused. So I do want to kind of not empirically, but rationalistic, like kind of like armchair thinking. What do we think about that? Like there is some concentration of power and concentration of wealth that's happening in our society, whether Marxist or capitalistic society. So what he's saying is still true.
Yeah, but one is saying that like I can trust in your self-interest, and one is saying that you're going to say that you're going to do this for the state, but you're going to act in your self-interest.
Mm.
So it's like putting this layer, this facade onto
Yeah.
that is for the good of the state, but it's really like just a execution of your what that you're allowed to do or not allowed to do. Like what you get these formal versus informal executions or whatever.
Um. Sorry. What do you mean? I don't understand. Like I wanna understand what your. I suppose I'm kind of going to the epistemological
yeah
like his assessment of inequality that's happening is actually true, right? Like we have, even a capitalistic society, even in socialistic society, we all naturally build up to this hierarchy that seems to be inevitable, or it just naturally just occurs. Like in the animal farm, like for example, Orwell,
yeah
he calls himself a Democrat. Well, not really, but he calls himself a socialist. Despite criticizing socialism. So he laid out this, animal farm wherein the owner is the one who's benefiting from the production of the animals. So the animals gotten rid of the owner, and at first it kind of worked out really well. So they have, they have the power the owner was gotten rid of, and they are enjoying their fruits of their labor until the bad pig kind of took advantage of that, right? So I mean that's what kind of what the initial discussion was going from. Like it seems to be inevitable that someone in self-interest and evil would just go into this society, but I kind of just wanna focus on the latter part where is the assessment of the inequality that kind of naturally occurs in humans. I suppose that's not really a question. Maybe
Yeah,
I
yeah,
need to narrow it down.
yeah. No, it's a question. It's like, but it's like a like this Rousseau vision, like this Pollyannish, like that people are inherently good, that there's no checks and balances to the system, that that the pigs are going to do the right thing to run and they're going to, but the power's going to corrupt them. The power's going to continue, and even though we're going to say these are the rules, they're kind of the rules, and then whenever it's to our advantage, we're going to change the rules. And whenever you kind of see that that seep in, then that's kind of it's too late, because they've already set up the system.
Yeah. So I suppose my question would be, is the assessment of inequality as a true? It is true. Um, but it is something that is not should be
Well,
forced to be. No, not forced to be, but we shouldn't be intervening to the inequality. Like it seems to be that naturally we're just gonna build, hierarchies
yeah,
that we can never out of. That is my question.
Yeah, that's really a key point. I'd forgotten to mention that, but that's really like one of the key dichotomies is like that you can have excellence or you can have equality. You can't they can't coexist.
Okay.
Because we can all do the same thing, or you can do more and I can do less. Like, or you could be, that's not to say that the thing that you produce in some other way is not going to be a better thing. Like you could be an artist and I could be a bricklayer, but I'm going to be a better bricklayer. But if we both are being measured as bricklayers, then I'm going to, how are we going to be equal?
Which then
Especially
begs
whenever. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, sorry. Which kind of begs the question, like if we are if inequalities is inevitable, then where's the room for compassion there?
In the understanding of people being made as individuals, as being made for their purpose, to be to be the best at what they can be the best at.
Okay, so yeah, okay, it's fine. I'll stop the questioning there.
I like that, man. You were right on.
No, those are really, really good questions, especially right there at the end. The dichotomies, I think we kind of came to a good synthesis there. You highlighted that key dichotomy, Kenneth, and the questions you brought up. The questions you brought up, Tom, has given me proposal ideas that I don't know the answer to. So thank you. I do have to call a timeout because it is 8 o'clock, and my lovely wife is over here telling me the baby's screaming and we got to eat dinner. Yeah, but I enjoyed this tremendously, Kenneth. It's been a pleasure to meet you, and I really enjoyed your proposal and exploring your thoughts. I already gave my Scribe report midway, so I'm not going to give a Scribe report. Before we wrap this up, though, Sofiane, you were the lead listener. Do you have any closing remarks that you'd like to say? And then Kenneth, I'll give the stage back to you, and then we'll call it good for the night.
I'm a little bit caught off guard here. I was expecting to make a closing remark, so I don't think I would be able
if
to
you
make
want
anything
to,
too good.
or anything you want to say. You don't have to be formal or anything.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but it just seems to me that it's all about how one perceives human nature, and from then you get the whole differences in terms of philosophy, philosophy, yeah. And yeah, at the essence, it's theological and philosophical in my opinion, and it just depends on, do you value human life or do you not, and from that you can just make your decisions.
I was kind of going towards the same direction at the end there. Thank you, Sofiane. All right. Well, Kenneth, anything you'd like to say?
Well, it's just, yeah, I've really enjoyed this. I mean, I'm sorry be so scatterbrained, unprepared. You know, maybe in the future. I really appreciate everybody helping pull something together and you know, making this into something that hopefully everyone was able to enjoy. You know, I don't think a lot of people jumped off the boat. So I appreciate you sticking it out, sticking with us. I think we can all just blame it on France and whatever happened in the French Revolution. Whatever that poison spirit they come out of there. No, just really, like I said, I'm really looking for, you know, how all these things, how it all ties together and how it applies in our daily lives, and you know, what, you know, the challenges that we're facing and the challenges that we've gone through, and you know, kind of hopefully, you know, we can all you know, travel this road together and explore the different ideas, and you know, let the good ideas thrive and let the bad ideas die. And you know, I really appreciate the conversation. And I think I don't know how many we would have to do to exhaust this, because I know that Svetlana needs her own time to lead for sure. She probably would have been better a better lead than I was, but and you know, yeah, I'm really excited to continue this conversation as we go forward. And thank you all for
Yeah.
listening to my nonsense.
Well, Kenneth, we'd
Especially
like to invite
Gerald.
you back. We're looking to have some more political dialogues in the future. I think we're going to be talking about communism in China and Hong Kong here in a few weeks with some other guests. So if you'd like to join our group, you're more than welcome to. I can add you to the group chat. We host these once or twice a week. Yeah. I do
Great.
admire your tenacity to dare to know and your upward aim. So this has been great. All right. Stop that.